Now it is the turn of our Honorable Sri Kerry Brace. Kerry, you can switch on your camera, but before that, let me give a quick introduction of yourself. We are really, it is a great privilege that we have Honorable Kerry Brace with us. We met a few times in the National Satsang in US, and Kerry is a psychologist. Okay, and he took initiation in 1971, when most of us in the satsang, we are not even born. And how he came to Sri Thakur, I'm sure you'll hear directly from him. And he had spent years in the holy company of Sri Bodda and Sri Dada. I mean, each time he comes to Deoghar, he had spent about 5 to 6 months. And there was one trip, he has lived for about 10 months in Deoghar. So I can say that, collectively, number of days that we have spent together, it will not be, as much as he has spent, because we typically go, 3 to 4 days, 3 days, in every trip, maybe yearly 3 to 4 trips maximum, and you can do that, math. And besides Kolkata, Deoghar, he has been to many places in India, and it is so interesting. I mean, he has been to Puri because Sri Bodda had been to Puri a number of times, and he has even come to Hyderabad. He told me in 1980s, and he told me that he was hosted by a lawyer. And आप लोग जानते हैं वो lawyer कौन है? He is our none other than our Prabhakar Kulkarni, right? So, but most important thing to me is he learned Bengali, being an American, and he translated Ishta Prasanga. And personally, I can say I did not get those books in Odia and Bengali. I did not learn to read. I started reading Ishta Prasanga with his translation, discourses on the ideal. And apart from those books, he has also translated Chalasrathi, Priti Vinayak, Jivan Devi. They are yet to be published, but they have been published in Liget, right? So with that, I'll take a pause. Garida, please take your time and take us through your journey. I know you are telling me you had come to Bangalore, you had to go to Aurobindo Ashram, but someone told you to come to Deoghar and all that. I leave it to you. It's just a family setup, you can say, very informal discussion. So please, share your experience with Sri Thakur, Sri Bodda, Sri Dada, his philosophy and all that. Thank you, Dada.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Chandrasekhar Da, as I'm honored to be a part of your meeting. As I told you, I'm not very comfortable giving a lecture or very skilled in public speaking, but as you said, I'll just tell you some of my experience and satsang. The first thing is that I had an interest in the Indian philosophy from actually almost my teenage years, and I heard about American Peace Corps, which you may know was a government program where we were sent to work in other countries, and my assignment was in Afghanistan. I was an English teacher there for 2 years, and during that time I had a chance to read quite a bit, well, I don't know, a few books anyway that related to Vedanta and Buddhism, and I became very interested in learning about meditation. So that's why after getting out of the service, I think it was late in 1970, maybe early in 1971, I decided to go and try to find somewhere to learn meditation in India or Sri Lanka. So first I went to Sri Lanka because I was interested in Buddhism, but I couldn't find any teacher or a place that felt welcoming there. So I went back to India, and it wasn't anything to do with the place Pondicherry. I actually don't think I knew about that at the time, but what happened was just by sheer fate or chance, I was on my way back and stopped in Bangalore, and it so happened that a friend of mine who had been a co-worker in Afghanistan in the Peace Corps was at the same hotel. That was a sheer chance, unlikely chance, you could say. And this person had been traveling around in the meantime and had met someone who had visited Deogar Ashram, had been there for a short while, and told about it, and it sounded interesting or welcoming. So since I didn't know anywhere else to go, I went straight from Bangalore to the ashram, although that was quite a long trip at that time by train, of course. And so I went to the ashram with the hope of finding someone who could teach me about meditation, because that was my whole purpose, was simply to learn how to meditate properly. But when I got there, you won't be surprised to find out immediately I was starting to be encouraged or even pressured to be initiated. And I at that point had no idea what initiation was about or what it meant. And it didn't feel like a good idea at first, because it's not something that we're familiar with in our culture here in America. But anyway, I felt that type of pressure actually repulsed me from trying to stay there. And I think even though I had seen Sri Borda in his public he was in a small room at that time that it was open to the public, and but only from a distance. So I actually went back to the town of Deogar and was getting ready to go on somewhere else to try to find another place to learn meditation. But in the meantime, Sri Borda, there was some other Americans there, just actually two, David and Gisela. Some of you who have been here may have met them. Gisela is still with us, and she's a very, very devoted satsangi still. But anyway, Sri Borda basically hinted to them that they should go and try to find me. They on their own initiative went into the town of Deogar, and by some happenstance managed to find a hotel where I was at and invite me back to their house. And they were very welcoming and nice. And within a day or so, they took me to, introduced me, I guess you could say, to Sri Borda, although not much was said. I just had the opportunity to sit with him with a small group of other people. And I'm not sure if it's still there in the ashram. It is called the Corridor. It's a straw-shaded small room that's beside the larger house where Sri Thakur used to stay. But anyway, he was sitting there, and the discussions were going on informally. And at that time, I began to feel that there's something in the atmosphere that's very loving, and I could start to feel that there's something going on that's beyond what I would have expected. And basically became inspired just by the sheer presence of Sri Sri Borda's spirituality or feeling that he had. And, within a few days, I decided that would be more important than what my original purpose was, that I should just go ahead and become initiated. And so I was initiated by fairly elderly Ritik whose name was Paresh Bora. He was worked at the Alachana magazine at that time, and he was again a very kind person. And then I was able to stay there. Borda had provided a house for the three Americans who were there, and we stayed in that house. And I started to practice the meditation and attend to the sittings with Sri Sri Borda, and that's how I got started. The other thing is that I guess Borda saw that what I had to contribute was mainly through the writings or literature, because that had been my area of study in college. So he had a group of people start doing the translations, and eventually he asked me to write articles for the Legate magazine and encouraged me to start to learn Bengali. So eventually after going back and forth between US and India a few times, I studied the Bengali on my own, and then he gave me assignments to do the translation of all various books that Chandrasekhar mentioned, but it really wasn't just me doing the translation. For every one, there was a scholarly ashram help person. It was the first one who did the early ones was Arun Ganguly Da, and I understand that he is. I don't know if any of you know him, but I understand he's in very poor health now. So your prayers for him would be needful. But anyway, he was a very wonderful person, and we had a very enjoyable time working on a translation with him. And then after that, Sri Sri Borda had Ajitaba Gupta Chaudhary assigned to him to help me with the translations, and he also was an amazingly kind, but also well-versed in Thakur's teachings. So we were able to translate the other books you mentioned. So that's basically my story. I have not been able to go back there for many years, and so I'm very much out of touch with what's going on there now. I know clearly that from the people I've talked with, it's how the satsang has expanded exponentially since I was there. It's truly amazing, the guidance that the Sri Sri Ashokada and Sri Sri Babaida have provided to allow such a tremendous expansion to occur. I guess the only other thing I was thinking of mentioning was the main teaching that I got from Sri Sri Borda, of course it's really Sri Sri Thakur's teachings, but the one I feel that he emphasized is summarized in the message, which says, "You are for the Lord, not for others. You are for the Lord, and so for others." And that he was the perfect example of that message, because it was clear that every little thing he did was totally directed towards being of service to Sri Sri Thakur. And but it was also clear that he cared for everyone who was in his surroundings tremendously, and would do anything that was needful to help them in whatever way was appropriate for their individuality, different for everyone. You could see that with the way things he advised for David and Gisela, and things he advised for me, and his care for all the ashram children who used to gather around him. So that's the main thing I hope everyone focuses on, that in helping anyone else, you're basically helping Sri Sri Thakur, because he lives in every conscious being. That's what I understand that message to mean. We are for others because he is in all of them, in all of us. So that's the message I've tried to keep going, even though I couldn't be there. Joy Guru.
Yeah, Elida, one second. Can you just switch on your camera back?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. We just cannot let you go. The simple, easy questions for you. Okay. So, I have read your article in Centenary Volume, right? You wrote it some 30 years back. Sri Sri Thakur,
yes.
Sri Sri Thakur, Anukul Chandra, the holy name and a world of centered growth, right? So to me,
Yeah.
that is the most comprehensive article in that Centenary Volume. With due respect to all the other reputed authors, I found it the best, most comprehensive. In part 2 of the article, you have drawn some comparison with Marilyn Ferguson's Aquarian conspiracy, right? Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. Would you like to elaborate a little bit for our fellow satsangis? And you have talked about holographic man as well. What do you recollect? Anything?
Well, I don't really recall the details, but regarding did you say the holographic paradigm?
Yeah, I think you have a section for holographic man.
Okay, yeah, that's
a whole of part 2 is about Aquarian conspiracy.
Yeah, that was
the personal and social transformation.
Yeah, that was actually a sort of a.
How Thakur is already doing it. What is there in the book as an idea? I think that.
Yeah, that was of that time in history. That was a rather advanced book, predicting what the positive future could be. Actually, the world has not followed overall of what the positive predictions in that book gave. It's sort of turned the other way in many respects, as we can see looking around the situation in the world these days. But I think in the long run, by devotion to the source of life, as we find embodied in the Lord, it will eventually get us through. The whole holographic paradigm, in a way, is the same idea as you are for the Lord, and so for others, because I think it's still a fairly well accepted theory in science that it's very hard to explain, because I don't really understand the physics of it, but the idea is that every bit or every particle or every atom, every subatomic particle, and anything you can pick in the universe in some way includes the whole. If you had an ability to actually look at it closely enough, you would see in any particle, the whole of the universe is there in some sense. So it metaphorically applies to Sri Sri Thakur or any of the past prophets, that their distinctiveness is that they actually experience everyone else as part of themselves. The whole living world, or even the whole physical world, is within the scope of their consciousness or understanding. So, as many of the stories about Sri Sri Thakur and Sri Sri Borda, I'm sure Sri Sri Ashokta, they're all about how he knows what is in people's mind. He tells you where you've just been, where you're going to go, what you should do to avoid danger. So many stories are like that. Antaryami, they call it, I believe is the word for it. That's the sign that the Purushottam knows is actually within each of us, or within everyone, and is experiencing what everyone experiences. So that's why it's important to take care of other people, because in taking care of other people, you're actually doing it for him. So the holographic paradigm is a consistent scientific theory that goes along with that concept, that religious concept. That's probably the best I can say. I'm not really an expert on it.
No, thank you. And Kerry, you are a psychologist, and Sri Sri Thakur is a multidimensional personality, right? We see a educationist in him, a scientist in him, and of course psychologist too, right?
Yeah,
so,
beyond it.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts about Sri Sri Thakur as a psychologist?
Well, he's far beyond ordinary psychology. Ordinary psychology was like a drop in the bucket compared to the teachings of Sri Sri Thakur, or what he could understand about human nature or human psychology. The psychology knows a little bit about mental illness and subconscious mind, but it's, in a way, part of it is sort of making hypotheses and trying to figure out some way to decide if it's true or not. Some of it is just learning how to control other people's or animals' behavior by reward and punishment. So at this point I'm retired, and I haven't kept up with the latest science in psychology. They have done a lot of good things and have learned to help people with mental illnesses quite effectively, which is probably the main thing. They've learned to help understand what drives people to do certain things socially, social psychology. Why, to help distinguish between people who really are, through no fault of their own, unable to do things that other people can do mentally. I feel that's an important aspect of it, not to learn that you can't expect all people to be able to do what anyone else could do. Some people just don't have the capacity. So I don't know. Maybe hope that answers your question.
Yeah, sure.
It's such a huge.
Yeah. like I live in Hyderabad, local language is Telugu. You know, I struggle to, you know, I am having challenges to learn Telugu. I'm yet to learn. Even Telugu people, you know, there are a lot of literature in Bengali, and they have their own challenges. How did you learn Bengali? If you want to share.
Still there? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can see you.
Speakers for long, extended periods, months at a time. And I was very interested in, I couldn't understand everyone was speaking Bengali. They weren't speaking English for the most part. And so there's strong motivation to try to learn to understand. And even Sri Sri Borda gave me a book about learning Bengali. And then I had, somehow I got the Peace Corps manual, which was created to teach the Peace Corps volunteers Bengali who were in that part of the world. And then when I would come back to US, I found some other pretty good books about learning the Bengali language. So just by studying and practicing, but again, I really don't, I saw, like I would run into people in Calcutta sometimes who were Westerners and they could speak Bengali just like a Bengali person. You couldn't tell a difference, but I really never learned to speak it properly, and I never got to the point where I could understand what was being said at the discussions. I could understand maybe half of it, but I even though I in doing the translation, that was completely every few words I would have to be turning to the dictionary and piecing together what the meaning must be. So I can't really take credit for knowing Bengali. It was more piecing it together from the slow reading of the Bengali words in the books.
You are just being too humble, but definitely it is so inspiring for all of us. Last two questions. You spent so long with Sri Sri Borda. What are your top two moments, if you can recollect, with Sri Sri Borda?
What are what? So, excuse me?
You spent so long with Sri Sri Borda?
Yeah.
For months, right? So what are your top two moments with him, if you can recollect, that's still so alive in you about Sri Sri Borda?
I would say it's not any one or two thoughts. It's his overall presence. I've never, and I think most people who were in his presence would say the same thing. It's almost indescribable. And I'm pretty sure it was because he was so much focused on Sri Sri Thakur that the love and the I guess maybe you could say power or energy, something came through that was, you could just feel like a force field almost if you were around him, a loving force field, which is indescribable. But that would be the most prominent thing. It was unlike anyone to me at that point. I never experienced, and then many people experience his understanding their own thoughts and minds. Similarly to what happened with many people with Sri Sri Thakur, that also was very striking, I guess you could say.
Okay. And how was your experience with Sri Sri Dada? You spent a lot of time.
Yes, he was actually in Assam for much of it. Most of the time I was there when I was there for a longer time. but then in later years he was at the ashram, and that time he was Sri Sri Borda's main right-hand man. I guess he took care of things that needed to be taken care of, and I think you and your generation probably have a better concept of him. I just remember he also has the same aura of power and love. But the difference, I guess, of every human being has a different air about them, and Borda's was much more serious and stern, you could say. He didn't smile too much, but Shokadai was, in a way, the opposite. He was always very not joking so much as seemed lighthearted, and making people feel, I don't know what the right word, it was just like a cozy atmosphere with sitting, he would, at that time, there was a tea stall within the ashram, within the compound where Saroshri Bhavan was, and it was like hanging out. It was almost informal, nothing like the formality that you would expect from such a revered person. So a few people would be sitting there drinking tea with him, and it sort of, I think he hid his actual Shakti, or he was taking care of everything, but he was just acting like an ordinary person. And but everyone loved him. Everybody looked up to him, and he would do anything that he asked. He was but he's remained as the helper as long as Sri Sri Borda was there. He didn't take, as far as I could tell, he didn't try a central role until Sri Sri Borda asked him to. So that's why I say I think you and others probably have a better concept. I just know he was very loving to me and very kind, jolly. Maybe I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Karida.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I just cannot express how grateful we are for your time, sharing your thoughts and experience. We'll talk again, but at least I know Pramod Bhai will give the vote of thanks at the end. But at least I would request 10 people on this call to just say thank you to Karida before he switches off.
I don't think it's that important, but anyway.
It is.
Okay. Well, Joy Guru.
Joy Guru. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dada. Joy Guru. Cancel. Thank you.
Okay.
Joy Guru.